Hello, someone just joined. Any questions about martial arts techniques that you might have? Feel free to ask anything. If you're training, if you have any questions about what's going on, this is a place where you can ask any questions about martial arts techniques, anything at all. Doesn't even have to be MMA. If you're interested in like Wing Chun topics, judo, anything you want. This is just an open place to ask questions about technique. I see there's a lot like most. What's up, David? How you doing, man? Good to see you. Good to have you here. I see a lot of YouTube channels that just kind of talk about drama and bash fighters, but I don't find this very interesting. I find the technique to be the most interesting thing in mixed martial arts. I think what made mixed martial arts so interesting was that we learned a lot about martial arts technique in general. I think martial arts has advanced more in the last 30 years than it has in its entire history when it comes to unarmed combat. So if anyone has any questions about techniques, there was one in particular that I've been looking at lately, which has been grabbing the wrist. If you look at my Volkanovski breakdown, Volkanovski is very big on grabbing the wrist. I think the oblique kick is a super underrated kick. The advantage of an oblique kick, there's a couple of them over a roundhouse kick, right? Like a low kick. One obviously is the hyperextension of the knee. If you watch John Jones versus Rampage, there's a massive hyperextension of the knee in that fight. And then two, okay, that's a good question about Topuria. I'll get to Topuria in a second. But oblique kick, one of the advantages versus a round kick, like a low kick, is that it's straight. So if someone's coming at you, you can use an oblique kick to stop them, to stop their forward progress. So a good example of this, if you look at Ronda Rousey versus Holly Holm, you'll see that, Ronda's kind of walking at her, and Holly Holm is able to stop her forward motion with an oblique kick. Now, a round kick doesn't really do that because it's going in that circular path. People are pretty good at running through it. Oblique kick might just stop them. What's up, Hamdan? Good. I'm doing good, man. Good to have you here. Good to see you. Any questions about martial arts technique at all, feel free to ask him. But we got a question here. Do you think Ilia Topuria is the best boxer in the featherweight division right now? I am not 100% sold yet on Ilia Topuria. I was talking about this in a live stream last night. You should see all the people that comment on my channel about wanting an Ilia Topuria breakdown. And the current deal I have with them is if he beats Max Holloway, we're looking at an Ilia Topuria breakdown. However, I remember there was once a time Calvin Kattar thought he was the best boxer in the UFC, and Max Holloway did not like that. Max Holloway is among the best boxers in the UFC. So if Ilia Topuria can convincingly beat Max Holloway, I will do the deep dive, and I will do the Ilia Topuria breakdown. What do you think of the camping passing that Gordon Ryan used in MMA? By camping passing, do you mean like you just kind of sit in good positions and then wait to get to the next position? Like you just camp in positions that are like top game positions where you hold it? Let's see here. Why do you think no-gi baseball chokes aren't used more in MMA? Okay. I've seen a few in amateur matches, but not in any high-level competition. I have a friend, actually. I teach kids classes, martial arts kids classes out of his gym. He has a video of him hitting a no-gi baseball choke in a jiu-jitsu tournament. So I can verify that the no-gi baseball choke does work, and it is a good thing. Why isn't it used more? It might be one of those things where it just hasn't been seen being used, so people are not confident in using it. That doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means that because it's not part of the meta right now, people are, because so much is on the line, people are very hesitant to bring in techniques that are outside of the meta. Inside camping. Huh, interesting. Tell me more about inside camping. Tell me more about what you mean. Oh, okay. Okay. So there's one thing, just here to listen to the live stream. Thank you, Lewis. Good to see you back again. Awesome to see. No, Lewis, feel free to ask as many questions as you like. I like the questions. The big thing about passing in jiu-jitsu versus MMA is that in MMA, you kind of don't care. Full guard and guard are still pins for you. right? So you've watched like watch Randy Couture or Khabib, and they absolutely murder people from that half guard. Sometimes if you're pressed up against the cage, it's better to stay in half guard. You can control them easier when they're in half guard. There is not the same rush to pass in MMA that there is in jiu-jitsu. You more just want to stay on top and hit them if you can. In amateur MMA, you can't use the oblique kick. What will you do to maintain? Okay, well, I do know this. The last time I was cornering a fight in Massachusetts, and it was in Springfield, Mass. And I asked the officials, "Hey, is the oblique kick legal?" And in Massachusetts, the oblique kick was legal for amateurs. Where tell me where this fight would be, and what the rules would be of the engagement. Two questions: do you train or coach, and how do you think elbows and tie-ups are underutilized? Yeah, I've coached a lot of fighters. I've gotten to play Mickey to Rocky many times. Competitive in jiu-jitsu myself. A lot of no-gi competitions, a lot of like kickboxing stuff. I did not get into MMA. I did not compete in MMA. I'm just a coach, but I've competed in, I think, 4 or 5 combat sports. Tie-ups from elbows are underutilized. One way they're really underutilized is that in Muay Thai, with that glove on, you can't grab the wrist. In MMA, with the open finger glove, you can grab the wrist. So grabbing the wrist to throwing an elbow is one way I definitely think they're underutilized. If you watch, John Jones did a Thai boxing seminar. I think, I don't know if it was a Tiger Muay Thai or what, but he's doing some really cool stuff with like grabbing wrists and throwing elbows over the top. What do you think of dirty boxing in MMA? Yeah, I think it's dirty boxing is kind of MMA boxing. Actually, I was talking on this thread last night about MMA striking has kind of become low kickboxing. So I definitely think dirty boxing is great, especially if you can mix it with the elbows. And if you actually, I don't know if this actually became a thing, but Mike Perry looked like he was starting a league for a second called the Dirty Boxing League. And it was like punches. I don't know if elbows were legal, but you could throw them to the ground and stand over and punch them for a while. Hamden, are the side kicks to the knee really not allowed in amateur MMA in Pakistan? What other moves are not allowed? Yeah, would love to know more about, we're talking about the legality of an oblique kick for amateur MMA. As someone who wants to teach martial arts for a living, what would you say are the pros and cons to teaching martial arts class compared to coaching fighters? Okay, fighters are what make it fun, right? Coaching fighters is kind of what brings the excitement. It's kind of what makes it fun as a coach. This is where you get to push martial arts to like high levels, right? You're not just teaching beginners and people that are never going to compete. This allows you to push it a little bit further. There is no money in it as of right now. Most of the time, if you're coaching fighters, you're probably going to lose money, right? Actually, if I had a fighter get to the UFC right now and I did like a 12-week camp with him, that would probably end up costing me money because the fighter wouldn't make much money for his first UFC fight. And I would feel bad about taking the fighter's money. I mean, you get paid $20,000 to get in there. And I mean, you go in there with a killer. How could I feel good about taking a percentage of your money? So you will probably lose money, but it makes it fun. The thing that's going to get you a lot of money is your kids class. If you can get a poppin' kids class going, that could pay for the whole gym, right? So when it comes to money, 80-20 rule, like effort reward ratio, the kids class is the thing to target it on. And that could pay for your whole gym. It's in Pakistan and oblique kick is not allowed. Also elbows, and same goes for ground and pound and knees to the face. Is a teep kick to the knee legal? The oblique kick is illegal, or any straight kicks to the knee legal, because if the oblique kick's not legal, sometimes just a teep kick to the leg is a good substitute. Which is the best fighter to copy, in my opinion? Probably George St. Pierre. If you could just master one move, I do believe that the locked hands double is the best move in the sport of mixed martial arts. I don't think that there's a better move than shooting in for that double leg. If you are the master of that, and you don't get caught in submissions from the bottom, and you get good at ground and pound, this is the way to go. One thing I will say about GSP is I wish he would do more damage with the ground and pound. One thing that made Khabib really exciting was just vicious ground and pound. Um, Ground and pound is kind of what makes the sport exciting, right? Kickboxing did not really catch on in the United States. I'm not talking about Thai boxing. I'm talking about very specifically kickboxing. There was a whole branch of full contact kickboxing with guys like Joe Lewis, Bill Superfoot Wallace that never really caught on. Americans like ground and pound. So if you can get good with the double leg and you can get good with the ground and pound, this is an excellent strategy. Just a heads up, guys. In about 50 seconds, an ad's going to run. There are many rules adjustments here for amateur, not professional. No kicks to the knee allowed. Okay. No kicks. Hey, man. I got a tip. Awesome, Dan. Thank you. Just a heads up, 30 seconds. So if I break, if I get a break in the answering this, we'll be back after the break. Yeah, probably. I have my suspicions about currently. There was a time when Greg Jackson's name was synonymous with great MMA coach. I mean, here's the thing too. He kind of was not just a coach in terms of you go see him every day and pad work and everything. He kind of managed long-term strategy as well. George St. Pierre is a really interesting case of this. He is someone who had Greg. We'll talk in a second. Break's coming up. Am I still on? Guys, I can't tell. Is the ad running or can you hear me? Okay. So you can hear me. Good. Basically, at one point, Greg Jackson's name was synonymous with excellence in coaching. In terms of strategy, he did not necessarily coach George St. Pierre, but George St. Pierre would consult Greg Jackson as like a long-term strategist. He would kind of guide George St. Pierre's career. Obviously produced John Jones, Rashad Evans, Diego Sanchez, Carlos Condit, a whole host of guys came out of there. So George St. Pierre Greg Jackson definitely like up there. However, I have seen now guys from New England have been going out to Greg Jackson's camp, right? They like go out to Greg Jackson's. They live in the dorms for like 12 weeks. And they're not winning fights. I don't know what's happening over there, but the guys that are going out there for like a 12-week camp and coming back are not doing as well as you'd expect. Let's see. What do you think is the best guard for MMA? Best for standing up, wrestle up, and best for submission? Okay. Guard, there's a couple things you got to be careful with guards. Let's take Z-guard, for instance. If you go Z-guard and you're turned on your side, you really have to be careful of your temples, right? If you turn on your side and someone hammer fists you in the temple, I mean, that's how like strokes happen and shit. You don't want that. It like messes with the blood flow to the brain. So whatever you do, you have to make sure you're protecting your temples when you turn onto your side. The next thing I'll say is one of the big things you want to make sure you prepare yourself to do if you're going to do MMA that's different than jiu-jitsu is you have to learn to be able to stand up, right? The easiest way to stand up is going to be to kick somebody off of you, right? So like they're on top of you, you're in your full guard, you bring your feet inside to their hips and you kick, and then you use that to get up. You're going to need to be able to kick and get up. It's huge. Can you make a breakdown on Nick Diaz's jiu-jitsu and MMA, especially on how he escapes back controls by grappling his opponent's leg transition? Yeah, I definitely think Nick Diaz would be a good breakdown to do. That's a real OG. I really like doing the guys from the old days. I think the guys from the old days, we were a generation trying to figure shit out. And it's really cool to see what these guys figured out. I think in addition to his jiu-jitsu, I would definitely cover his boxing, especially if you guys ever see Nick Diaz versus BJ Penn. That is a really excellent example of just high-volume boxing. Do you think wrestle-ups from half guard or single legs would be obsolete once knee ground strikes are allowed? No. Once knee, like if you could knee someone to the head, if you could knee a grounded opponent. So if you can knee or kick a grounded opponent, this would change basically everything. If you could, even if you're in top side control and you could knee a person in the head, it would change everything. Why? Ooh, okay. Brody, $5, man. You the man. What is your take on why Carlos Condon's wrestling never developed? He was in a great wrestling camp, but nothing. This is a really interesting question. So I remember watching Carlos Condon versus George St. Pierre, and George St. Pierre just really being able to bulldoze him kind of at will, right? He was taking him down. He was doing this type of thing. Some people, your body could really go one of two ways in this sport, right? A body designed to be an elite striker is very different than a body that's designed to be a wrestler. The energy systems are different. One's a lot more anaerobic, which is more of the grappling, like those scrambles are more like anaerobic sprints. And one is more aerobic, the striking. Carlos Condon's body, to me, leaned really closely, much more closely towards the striking end of the spectrum. It looked like he just kind of fell in love with the striking, and that's what he enjoyed the most, and that's what he was most effective with. So the wrestling body type never caught up. What made him, George St. Pierre so interesting is he was just kind of a middle ground between the two. If you look at that guy, his body really is like somewhere half between striking and grappling. And this reason why he was so good is because I think he really hit the middle. He'll say himself, not the best kickboxer, not the best grappler, best at mixing it, and his body kind of reflects that. He's in the pain of my Richard, but no arm to him. Not sure. Clarify what you mean on that. Thank you, Brody. I appreciate that. Really nice of you to say. What would you consider a good counter for an Anderson-style front snap kick? Oh, okay. Also, how do we adjust when it's being thrown to the stomach instead of the face? You need something called the Pac-Man catch, right? So the kick's coming up. You don't know whether it's going to the body or to the head. If you start one hand up, like by your forehead area, and the other hand down by your belly button area, and you close, it'll catch either a head kick or a body kick. So you need this technique that it could catch either one. If it's going to the body, the hands will naturally meet at the place where it's kicking at the body. If it's going to the head, the hands will naturally hit at the place where it's going to the head, the Pac-Man catch. If you look on my site, let me go to my site real quick. I have a whole article written about the Pac-Man catch, and I think it's really one of the first catching techniques that you got to learn. But the fact that it's designed to catch both a body kick and a head kick is extremely, extremely useful. So I am going to share my screen here for a second. If you have seen this site before, this is my database of all the techniques in MMA. Right now I have striking up there. So there's a catching section. If you go to the catches archive, let's see here. Where is it? The Pac-Man catch. Yeah. This is going to show that catch in action, right? And give you a photo instructional. So you'll be able to see here. I don't know if you can see that on the screen, but notice one hand's high, one hand's low, and he's bringing them together. And the action of bringing them together is what catches the kick that's either coming to the head or to the body. Let me drop a link to this in the chat, guys. This page here is going to be the Pac-Man catch. Oh, the screen just went full. All right, let me stop sharing that. Okay. If you look, there's a link in the chat that will cover that catch for catching that kick. What is the best martial art to start in MMA? Okay, if you look at the history, it's been wrestling, but I don't think that's the answer anymore. Let me elaborate on this. There's two things I've noticed in modern MMA. One is that MMA itself has kind of become a martial art, right? Back when I started, we used to go around, like, I would go to a boxing gym, I would go to a taekwondo gym, a jiu-jitsu gym, I wrestled in high school, I did some wrestling in college, and you would kind of mix them together, and that was MMA. Well, it's been 30 years. It's been 30 years of mixing it together. And now MMA has kind of become a martial art in itself. It has unique aspects, such as the ground and pound. You're not going to be able to find another martial art with ground and pound. It has the cage. You're not going to find another martial art with that cage. So you could study MMA just as it is now. The other thing, too, is I don't the thing with striking as a base that is advantageous versus like grappling base is that it's a lot easier to learn wrestling defense than it is to learn wrestling. And these grappling arts, BJJ, wrestling, judo, they kind of give you bad habits. One example is I've seen a lot of guys get mount and go for something like an armbar and they fall off the top when like they should have just been pounding the guy out. Pounding the guy out would have made it easier to go for an armbar even. So I definitely think either striking or MMA itself. Now you can't go wrong with wrestling, you can't go wrong with jiu-jitsu, but we're seeing that as a base, maybe not the best anymore. What do you think of K-guard for MMA? I think if you could adapt it so that you really taking into the strikes into consideration, the strikes really change everything. But I do think any guard is such that if you took it and you sat down with it and you really played around with the strikes and you developed a system around it, then I think anyone could figure it out. Or you'd have to know, you'd have to know good amount of martial arts theory, but you could do it. K-guard. Why is the cross guard underutilized in MMA? It's one of those things where pure jiu-jitsu and sport jiu-jitsu is becoming less and less popular in MMA. Like there are a lot. There was a 19-year-old kid I know. He's from Ukraine, and he didn't really even want to do jiu-jitsu. Right? It's kind of become. I mean, it's much less effective than when I was a kid, right? I mean, it's no longer UFC 1 where Royce Gracie and jiu-jitsu just kind of walk through everybody. So you're seeing a lot less jiu-jitsu in general come over, kind of because MMA has become its own thing. It's kind of adopted its own meta. For standing up, you're seeing a lot of people go to like the referee's position, which is like the turtle. And they don't want that in jiu-jitsu, but there's also not a lot of stand-ups in general in jiu-jitsu. Do I know Danny Perez? I do not. Tell me about him or her. There have only been 2 submissions. Is that right? Get out of here. Only 2? Oh, and title fights. Still, I mean, it used to be like every title fight was a submission. I mean, when I was growing up, I always liked striking, but grappling was so dominant in MMA at one point. I wasn't even sure if striking worked. Really, grappling was that powerful. Obviously, we learn, but it's crazy to see jiu-jitsu. I mean, I've really kind of seen the rise and fall of jiu-jitsu and MMA. It's been interesting and kind of heartbreaking. Who else do we study to have high-level ground and pounds, but it has the usual suspects? Like Jones, Khabib, and Rockhold? Oh, good question. I think Randy Couture is a really good one to study. Fedor is a really, really good one to study. You could look at Mark Coleman, but he's kind of a suspect because of the steroids and the size. Tito Ortiz, as stupid as he is, had some good ground and pound back in the day. George St. Pierre is good if you want to have control while you're ground and pounding. And any of these Dagestani boys are interesting to take a look at. In particular, Khabib. If you took a look at my Khabib one, there's some interesting stuff in there, as well as Usman Nurmagomedov. Thoughts on arm triangle escape, where you pretty much roll backwards? Yeah. I mean, it's not the textbook jiu-jitsu escape. But you're going to find that in a lot of matches, you just get these scrambles, right? You're just scrambling, you're moving around. And those kinds of things happen a lot in scrambles, where you just, in that moment, you rolled back and you got out of the arm triangle. You couldn't exactly explain it again if you have to. But yeah, I think as long as it works, it works. You see, where are you from, David? Where are you from? Tell us about him. How good do you think Ilia Toporia's boxing is? Okay. Ilia Topuria is by far the most requested thing on this channel. And what I've been telling people is I'm not quite sold yet. I think there is an asterisk on the Volk fight because of the Islam fight. We kind of established there was only about 4 months in between those fights. I have said if Ilya Taporia gets past Max Holloway and does so convincingly, he has my full attention, and there'll be a breakdown about him on this channel. How would you adapt a person, BJJ or judo, in order to work for it effectively for MMA and become dominant with it? Okay. Um, the biggest problem, they kind of have two different problems. The biggest problem with judo is because the double leg is not allowed in judo. What happens in MMA is the judo guys will start kind of walking at you like zombies. I mean, Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey is kind of the excellent example of this. And when you don't have the double leg, what makes it so great is it's a takedown that closes distance, right? You could be from way back. I remember seeing how far Chael Sonnen could shoot in with his double leg, closing epic distance. Khabib low single could close like a block away. And if you can add that double leg to your judo base and your BJJ's base, then you got it going on. Technically, George St. Pierre is a jiu-jitsu fighter that just mastered the double, right? He's definitely. I mean, he's never wrestled in high school or college. Wrestling was really not that big in Canada. George St. Pierre is just a jiu-jitsu guy that mastered the double. So in both situations, good double leg is the answer. I think the saddle and single leg X game could be a game changer for gripping in MMA. Yeah, there is a lot of room in MMA to still change the game. It's a young sport. We're still learning. We're still learning an awful lot. I remember when Anderson Silva hit that snap kick on Vitor Belfort, people were like, oh my God, that kick works. I didn't know that kick works. So now everyone's throwing it. I remember when the first wheel kick was landed. People were like, holy shit, was that a wheel kick that works? And then that kind of just became part of the game too. The spinning back fist. I believe the first spinning back fist we saw was Vanderlei Silva versus Chuck Liddell. Maybe not the first, but it was like the first one in a big fight, and then the spinning back fist became very popular. So you could be the guy that makes it popular. John Fitch had the best ground and pound in the UFC. He had the best control. He definitely had the best control. I don't know how he was with damage, though. I'd have to go back and rewatch the fight. I felt like he kind of laid on you, but I would have to take another look. From Spain. Good, David. So this guy is a fighter from Spain. Good. What do you think of leg locks in MMA, and how would you make it work? Okay, the problem with leg locks in MMA is once you entangle your legs and you start working for those ashis, now it's hard to get up. You are actually connected to him in a way that you're stuck to him. And another problem is like, let's say he's standing over and you're going for your leg locks. If you bring your hands down to start grabbing his legs, your head is completely open. So you get attached, so you can't stand up, and you can leave your head open. The heel hook, which is like perhaps one of that and like the rear naked choke in sport BJJ, are like the most popular finishes. But in MMA, the rear naked choke is number one, and the heel hook isn't even in the top 10. To make the heel hook work in MMA, I would think you would have to go for it from a bad position, right? Like top mount or something. You can't really do it from the open guard like you can in jiu-jitsu, right? Because of the shots that are coming at you. It's a tough one. It's a tough one to make the heel hook work. Problem being is you always want to be on top. And if you're on bottom, you always kind of want to stand up. So it's a tough one to make it work. But you could be the one that does it. We know punching while moving backwards is a true and tested way to KO an opponent by rushing in. So is there a way to kick efficiently while moving backwards without it's easier to knee while moving backwards. That is a lot easier than kicking. One kick that works really well moving backwards, though, is a side kick. I have seen people kind of hop backwards as the side kick, myself included, as somebody runs in. So that one works really well. If you're hopping backwards, you probably want to be using some kind of straight kick. If you throw like a roundhouse kick and you're moving backwards, they can still rush in through that. So some kind of straight kick. It is crazy how O'Malley has no striking background, but I think that's kind of showing how MMA has become a sport in itself, right? He's one of these kids that this generation starts doing MMA instead of like starting at another sport than coming over. Ilya Taporia is training now in my city. Oh, very cool, dude. Very cool. See if you can train with them. Maybe, what's going on? Maybe to the leg or body. I have seen people use Andrew Tate actually does this. I have a breakdown of him doing it on this channel. Andrew Tate will throw the round kick, and what he'll do is he'll like bend his knee so that his shin goes across your stomach, and that way you can't run past the frame he's created. It's kind of like using a frame in jiu-jitsu. So yeah, that one will work. You can lean back and throw that at the same time. Yeah. Who do you think will be the next dominant Dagestani? Ooh, I think the current theory is Umar. Umar is kind of on deck to be the next big Dagestani. Now, the one who I think is really to watch, who's really got like Stephen Thompson kicks with Khabib wrestling, is Usman. He was the Bellator champion, but he's in some hot water now. Something about a performance enhancer. Got popped somehow. I love Marcelo type guards, X single leg. Yeah, it's great stuff, man. It's great stuff. He has a book about the X guard that's definitely worth checking out. Okay. I train jiu-jitsu exclusively, at least for now. My question is, what kind of guards should I focus on, and how can I help my BJJ style to be easily transferable to MMA? Yeah, so one, you're going to have to know full guard. Butterfly guard's a good one. I think one of the most underestimated guards, half guards, might be the lockdown. That's a 10th planet thing. Some people call it the scorpion. From any guard, though, I think the biggest thing is, like, I got all the way to like purple belt, and I realized no one ever taught me how to like stand up from guard. Like, they teach you the technical stand up, but no one ever taught me how to like kick someone off of me and stand up. So one of the biggest things to invest in now, if you want to be transferable to MMA, is be able to get up from any guard that you're in. What doesn't guard playing work at the high level in MMA? We saw Armand neutralize Oliveira's bottom game. So one of the things is just the physics, right? You always want to be on top just because you have the weight bearing down on them. You never want to be on your back in MMA. And because of that, you see a lot of people work it less, I'm guessing. People don't want to be there. The other thing, too, is if you come in from a BJJ background and you haven't from the start learned striking from your back, like one of the best things you could do from your back is cut them with an elbow. Check out BJ Penn versus Michael Bisping. And, GSP fought really hard for that takedown, only to get cut, and then Bisping stood back up. So it just made the takedown not worth it and made him not want to do it again. Do you remember how Dawson KO'd via hammer fist? Yeah, I do. I have a breakdown of that. And actually what happened was Dawson's the guy he knocked out, he was going for an ashi, and that thing was still on even after he was knocked out. The man's knocked out cold on the ground, and that leg lock that he tried to put in is still attached to Dawson's leg. Dawson had to like peel it off while this guy was unconscious. And that's what happens. You get so connected to the opponent, you can't stand up. What is the secret to a knockout like Sean O'Malley or Conor McGregor? Yeah, okay. It's kind of this thing, you would call it aggressive counterfighting. And what you do is, some counterfighters, they move back the whole time and they wait for you to come in and they clip you. McGregor and O'Malley will put pressure on you, make you feel like you have to do something, and then they clip you as you come in. So like they'll back you up to the cage and stand in your face and like peck at you, make you feel like you got to do something big, and then they get you from there. This is called fighting on the draw, drawing something out from your opponent. It's I would consider it like one of the higher level ways of fighting. So the Andrew Tate kick is basically a lead sideways knee to the gut, using the same rotation as a lead roundhouse. I can see that landing after a jab. Yeah, I have a breakdown of him doing it. He basically frames his shin across you. He kicks you first, but then when he's like rechambering it, the shin goes across the belly. Definitely, I've used it. It works great. Getting up from close guard sounds like impossible. Yeah, one of the biggest things though is you got to learn to kick him off you, right? In jiu-jitsu, it's kind of rude if you like put 2 feet on his chest or his hips and you just give a power kick. But that's what you got to do in MMA. That's what makes it possible. For MMA, is turtling? This is a good question. Is MMA for MMA is turtling the number one form of pin escape? I can't imagine a near elbow escape. Sure, yeah. So yeah, you're gonna see that the turtle position in wrestling they call it the referee's position. It's where you're on your hands and your knees. That position is just kind of how people stand up. It's just an easy position to get up from. If you weren't super worried about the rear naked, it's an easy position to get up from. It's good if you can get to that position, push your back against the cage. It's easy to kind of slide your way up. So if you're into MMA, you should know how to use that position both on top and bottom. Who do you have for Jones versus Aspinall? I think it's not a fair fight right now because Jones has had so many fights that his body is just too broken down. Tom Aspinall is fresher. He's younger. He hasn't had the wars. These fights take years off your life. And John Jones has been doing 5-round fights since he was for 15 years now. I think what should happen is Tom should become the unified champion. And John Jones should have an open invitation to come and fight him whenever he wants. I think Tom should have a few more fights just to get some wear and tear. And then it's a fair fight for Jones. I also feel like, let's not throw away John Jones and Stipe yet. Let's let these two legends fight each other and sail off into the sunset together. They're two badasses. Like Stipe was the best, most defending heavyweight of all times, and John Jones is John Jones. And let them fight one more time. Two guys about the same age, about the same damage. Let them fight and sail off into the sunset together. There's always going to be another Tom Aspinall for a guy like John Jones. Let's not have such a short memory that we have to feel like John Jones has to fight Tom Aspinall. Let Tom be the champion. Let John Jones have an open door to face him whenever he wants, and let Jones fight Stipe so two legends can sail off into the sunset together. Yeah, it would be horrible. That's why they're so good. They know all the leg rides from the turtle position. Question was, wouldn't turtle be awful if your opponent is like a Hamzat or Khabib, where they ground and pound? It's going to be a lot worse if you don't know what to do from there. Trust me. Thoughts on the octopus guard? This was a Dave Camarillo thing at one point. If I remember correctly, it's where like your foot is around, you're on your back, and your foot goes across your own back, and like your foot hooks underneath his arm, and it like immobilizes this one arm. I think it's good if you can get it. I've had a lot of trouble getting it. Does anybody know why Robert Whittaker never uses Hapkido joint takedowns? Is it because of the glove? I think the question is, why would he? Does he have a Hapkido background? Does Robert Whittaker have a Hapkido background? That would be interesting to know. The wrist locks used to be really popular in traditional martial arts, but over the years, like once MMA started, we just kind of didn't see them anymore, right? We just didn't see much stuff from the wrist locks. I remember like when I did Hapkido as a kid. Like you would grab the wrist and like the guy flips you over and like drags you across the room. It's crazy, but we have not really seen them show up in MMA. I still think they could. I do them to guys sometimes. Just the fighters I work with that are smaller than me, I'll wrist lock the shit out of them. It's great. It's really good. All right, guys, if we got any more questions, feel free to leave them in the chat, talking about any kind of martial arts technique topic. How would a fighter with an indestructible chin, like Holloway, can adapt his style to make it more realistic? Let me hold on a second. How would a fighter without an indestructible chin like Holloway? Okay. It's a really good question. I think that even if you have an indestructible chin, you should be developing a style that it doesn't get hit. Right? You should always be developed. You should never want to get hit. You should never be wanting to test your chin. If the commentators are talking about your toughness, this is a horrible thing. The worst thing that could happen is the commentators are talking about your toughness because that means you're getting the shit kicked out of you. He's a Hapkido black belt. That's really interesting. Now, Hapkido is kind of similar to Korean Aikido, but I think it's much better, much better than Aikido. It also has a lot of kicking techniques and punches and stuff. So he could just be using certain parts of Aikido and Hapkido, I mean, and leaving out others. Why do you think the body triangle on the back is so hard? Yeah, okay. It's because that position where you have the hooks and you roll off to the side is not as good as staying on top of them and flattening them out. So many guys that do jiu-jitsu, they get the hooks and then they like roll off to the side and they try to choke. In MMA, you want to stay on top. So you want to keep those hooks in and you want to belly them out. It's just because you're not on top anymore, right? Like you're not on top and it's just going to be your arm fighting his neck. Thank you for the compliment, Mystic Mac. Oh, Mystic Mac's in the house. Much appreciated. That one took a lot of work. That was the one that ended up on the UFC. That one took a lot of work. Do you think Sean O'Malley's striking style is efficient enough to last? Yeah, I do, actually. I do. Maybe not the kicks as much, but the punches for sure. That straight punch. People might figure out that straight punch, though. People might figure out that straight punch. All right, we got time for one more question. Who's got one more question? Last question of the night. Last question coming in. But let me see here. All right, guys. Looks like we're all set for the night. Thank you, everyone. Oh, what breakdown will you be doing next? Ooh, that's a really good question. Let me see. Let's take a minute. If you have a recommendation for a breakdown that's coming next, feel free to leave it in the chat there. And if there's someone that pulls away with it, we'll go with that person. Someone takes a bunch of votes. We'll make that person next. Oh, thank you. The video editing, man, I love video editing. The animations, I think they add a lot. They are time consuming. They're annoying to add in, but they're definitely worth it. What do you guys think of like a Sanchai breakdown? How do you guys think about Sanchai? I've always kind of wanted to tackle a Sanchai breakdown, and I think he would be a good one. There's so much to learn there, and his career's kind of coming to an end. I tend to go for breakdowns when their careers are coming to an end. All right, so next one we'll do Sanchai, something Sanchai. All right, you guys. Leg kickboxing, that's got to come out too. That's gonna be a good one. I use Final Cut for that. That's Final Cut what I'm using. All right, guys. Peace out. Thanks for tuning in tonight. We'll be back again probably tomorrow. All right, guys. Peace.